I like this one. I don't like this one. I want to give a big thank you to everyone who supports this channel on Patreon. And if you'd like to join them and get access to an exclusive weekly mini podcast, head on over to patreon.com/Lachlan Likes a Thing. Thanks. Hey everyone, how are you going? Today is a sunny day that marks the end of a not quite cyclone here in Sydney. And it's been a bit hectic over here, so I haven't had a chance to do any full reviews. But what I've got for you here today is a first impressions comparison review between the Sennheiser CX3.0 and the Momentum in-ear. Now, the Sennheiser CX3 3.0, if you want to be fancy, is the successor to the rather popular CX300, which was a warm and bassy sounding earphone that you could really easily find in normal retailers, at least here in Australia. And I know a lot of people who have the CX300, and I feel like it was a safe choice. Even if you could get better value, if you did a bit of research and you were willing to order online and go through some of the more obscure brands, this was an earphone that you could just walk into a store and pick up, and you could be relatively sure that the signature was going to work for the average person on the street. The Momentum in-ear is the new earphone in the Momentum line of Sennheiser kind of lifestyle consumer products. I got both of these at Dick Smith at a 40% off sale. So this one was usually 90 Australian dollars. I got it for 54 Australian dollars. This one was usually 169 Australian dollars. I got this for 101 Australian dollars. And thank you again to everyone who helped me out with that. I've actually had both of these earphones for a month now, and I've been using them on and off. So I've got a pretty good grip on how much I like them. I still got some final comparisons that I want to do in the individual reviews, but I just wanted to give a quick comparison. So let's start with the CX 3.0. So as you can see, it's actually a pretty simple design, classic in-ear earbud style. Nothing much going on here, maybe vaguely reminiscent of a plastic version of the IE800 if you were being wishful. It's actually quite sturdy in terms of its construction for a $50 earphone. The cables especially are nice and thick. You can wear the cable just hanging down from your ear or around the back of your ear. I actually just wore them cable down. Surprisingly, there was very little cable noise when worn this way. So it's a simple, practical design, easy to pop them in and out of your ears, no fuss. Something of note is that the silicone tip, if I can just bring that into focus, the silicone tip, get rid of that yucky earwax, there we go. The silicone tip is interesting because it has this divider in the middle here and a bevel around the edge of the tip. And I'm not sure, but these two things might actually have some sort of acoustic purpose. So for instance, the divider could act as a sort of waveguide, and the bevel just could reduce airflow resonance as the air exits the sound tube. Again, I'm not sure what the difference or if there's any real significant difference with this design, but it is nice to see that kind of attention to detail. Now, the earphones appear to be vented here at the top. Isolation is about average, nothing special, but nothing too bad either. Anyway, let's have a look at the Momentum in-ear. Now, the Momentum in-ear, if we just wait for the camera, there we go. Okay, so this is the Momentum in-ear, and as you can see, this is not a conventional design for an earphone. It looks like a kind of space fish or something like that. Apparently, it's plastic built around a stainless steel core. Quite honestly, I find this design ugly, especially the plastics used, because there's these visible horizontal mold lines across the plastic. Not a big fan of, and it seems a little cheap for a $169 earphone. That said, the design is quite stable in the ear, the way it is built, even if you wear the cable down, which seems to be the suggested way of doing it. The way this little tab works, it does guide the cable out of your ear, which is nice, and it seems to reduce cable noise, which is a big plus. And this circular thing here makes it really kind of easy to pull this earphone in and out of your ears. The downside of this design is that because of this unusual shape, it seems to pick up wind noise relatively well. So if you are in a windy area, this earphone is probably not going to be enjoyable to use. This is also a vented design with the vent hiding somewhere. There we go. The vent is at the top of the earphone, just here. Again, isolation is average. It has this semi-flat cable, black and red, not my favorite kind of color scheme, on a cable. And then it has an iPhone remote here. I think you can get an Android version as well. Now let's talk about the sound. And we'll start with the CX3. I actually quite like the CX3 for the price. I don't have that much experience with the CX300. I've only heard it briefly, but I don't think Sennheiser has really messed with the formula all that much. It's a safe, fun, bassy kind of signature. It's very warm and rich, so it's in the same sort of family of sound as, say, the Shure SE215 or the VSonic VSD3S, which are probably the best comparisons to make. This is a sound that's not going to get anyone raving about how clear they sound or, how balanced they sound. But at the same time, it's a rich, enjoyable sound that's going to please a lot of people with a lot of modern genres of music, and especially if you're listening in public transport and stuff, so that you don't kind of hurt your ears with excessive treble. I actually find this has a better overall sound than the Shure SE215. It's a little more... It's a little less compressed and muddy sounding, with more treble detail and bass that isn't quite as bloated. That was my takeaway from that comparison. It's nearly half the price of the SE215, but the trade-off is that you don't get that very strong noise isolation. You don't get that negative profile fit with the SE215. That is very easy to sleep on. And again, we'll just have a look at the SE215 for comparison. As you can see here, they're very, very different in sort of physical design. So this is still going to be the goer for a lot of people, but I do like the sound of the CX3.0 more. Compared to the VSonic VSD3S, which I've got here, I think the VSD3S sounds more clean and clear because it has more forward mids. But it's also a sort of preference thing, because the VSD3S has this really brassy forward mid section, and some people actually find that too aggressive and a little irritating. I personally quite like it, but I can see why you would find it irritating. The CX3 is perhaps the safer choice in this regard. The mids aren't recessed by any means, but they are less extreme than they are on the VSD3. And the build quality does seem a little more consistent with the CX3, just because the cables just seem a little more secure, even though they're not detachable, they don't rotate around on the MMCX joint. So that's kind of nice. Again, this is not the earphone that you would get if you want a balanced sound or a really detailed listen, but I'm pretty confident that for most people walking into the store and picking these up for $50, they would be quite happy, and they get a nice looking package, so it would actually make for a really nice gift if you were to give these to someone. So I'm quite charmed by these. But what about the momentum in ear? Well, unfortunately, with the momentum in ear, this is one of those earphones where I think the technical ability of this earphone is really good, but the actual signature of the earphone is just not something that I'm into. And what do I mean? Well, this is an earphone with a sound signature that I think is quite unnatural. It has really big bass and somewhat recessed vocals and mids, and a high section that just sounds a bit brittle and metallic. And technically, all the elements on their own are good and capable. The bass on this earphone digs really deep, and it's well controlled. And probably the most prominent aspect, the mids are smooth and clean, and the treble is detailed and shimmery without being sort of aggressive or piercing. But it's the proportion of these elements, the way that they all kind of mesh together, that really bugs me. The mids are sort of recessed, particularly male vocals and female vocals as well. So I find myself turning up the volume just to be able to hear those a bit better. And when I turn up the volume on bassy tracks, the low frequencies get too much on this earphone, and the whole thing sounds like this kind of one note droning bass feel. The mids are, as I said, a little bit recessed, so instruments like trumpets sound a bit distant. The treble without the mids to back them up just sound kind of, the treble just sounds kind of odd and sort of tinny, a little brittle. That shimmer kind of cymbal without sort of the mid energy to back it up. Stringed instruments in particular, I think, sound a bit unnatural on this earphone. They sound kind of compressed with no real bite to them. Now, I know I have listened to a lot of earphones, so I'm more picky than most people, and I can recognize that this is an earphone that is signature that just isn't for me. I think a lot of people could like this, and I think the average person on the street would think it sounds great. But I just think it sounds a bit unnatural, and it makes me feel like I have a head cold whenever I listen to it. Even at the $100 I paid for these, I don't really like them, especially compared with some of the other earphones that are my favorites around this price range, like the Yamaha EPH 100 and the VSonic GR07. I can concede that, you know, this is a good earphone, technically speaking, but it's just the signature. It's just something that it's not my cup of tea. Anyway, surprisingly, I do like the cheaper CX3 over the more expensive Momentum in-ear, and this experience has kind of made me curious to try the Sennheiser CX5.0, which is the step up from the CX3. Go ahead and like this video if you found it helpful, and please subscribe. I'd love to hear your comments in the comments section. Thanks again to everyone who made this review possible. Now, if you'd like to join me, if you'd like to join the viewers supporting this channel, you can do that by heading over to patreon.com/LachlanLikesAthing. You can also talk to me on Facebook at facebook.com/LachlanLikesAthing or on Twitter at LachLikesAthing. Happy listening.